Hello. Welcome to these candidate forums presented by the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County through TV Tacoma. I am Liz Kernitz-Thurlow of the League of Women Voters. Both Bailey Wambold, also of the League, and I will be moderating these forums, and we are happy to be once again working with TV Tacoma. The League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County wishes to acknowledge that we live on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tahoma. We actively seek inclusive and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities. The general election is Tuesday, November 4th. All ballots in their signed envelopes must be in drop boxes or postmarked by 8 p.m. on November 4th. Our vote is our voice. Please use yours. In this year's general election, we will be electing a new mayor, 4 Tacoma City Council seats, at-large position 6, and council districts 2, 4, and 5, 1 position on the Tacoma Civil Service Board, 1 Tacoma School District Number 1 Director, 3 Port of Tacoma Commissioners, positions 1, 2, and 4, 3 positions on the Metropolitan Park District of Tacoma, a Pierce County Council District 5 representative, and a new Pierce County Charter Review Commission. We do not interview candidates for Charter Review or Pierce County Council on this program. This is a big, important election. Don't forget to vote. If you're not yet a registered voter, you can register at the Pierce County Auditor's Office or at public libraries. Because we are the League and nonpartisan, we will not present forums when only 1 candidate would attend. Our forums are covering Port Position 4, Tacoma Mayor, Tacoma Council at-large Position 6, and Tacoma Council 2 and 4, and all 3 Parks District races. Please watch these forums, read your voters' pamphlet, check candidates' websites and news organizations, attend forums at which candidates are speaking, and make yourself an educated voter. Bailey Wambold and I will both be moderating forums, some separately, some together. Questions have been prepared by Bailey, me, and other members of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. The general election is on Tuesday, November 4th. You may mail your ballot or put it in a drop box. Be sure to get it in a drop box or postmarked by 8 p.m. on that night. And please, don't forget to vote. Welcome to this forum for Mayor of Tacoma. I'm Liz Kernitz-Thurlow, and I am moderating the forum for the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. As always, huge thanks to TV Tacoma for recording these forums and making them available on YouTube as well as on TV Tacoma. They will also be available on the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County website. Election Day is November 4th. You can still register to vote. Registration is available through Election Day at the Pierce County Election Headquarters or local libraries. The candidates for Mayor of Tacoma are, in ballot order, Anders Ibsen and John Hines. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. Both candidates have agreed to our ground rules, which include not interrupting or commenting on each other, correct? Thank you. In Tacoma this year, we are electing a new mayor and 4 council members, so we might be seeing big changes. We will begin with opening statements, up to 2 minutes, in ballot order. Our timekeeper is Terry Baker from the League of Women Voters. So, Anders Ibsen, your opening statement, please.
Hello, and thank you very much for making the time. My name is Anders Ibsen, lifelong Tacoma resident and former city council member. I want to start by thanking the voters of Tacoma for your first place finish in the Tacoma primary. It's clear with these election results that voters in our community are hungry for change, for a new approach, not more of the same. As a lifelong member of the city of Tacoma, I've seen the amazing possibilities that as community members we can achieve when we put our heads together. I've also seen the gaps and the needs for improvement. As a lifelong Tacoma resident, as the father of a young child, and as a small business owner, I have had the privilege of speaking with so many of my neighbors in the city and just relating to the issues that you are saying are important, that we need to do a better job of. That means everything from keeping our neighborhoods safer, that means having a more responsible regional approach to homelessness, and actually growing the economy to create middle-class pathways of opportunity for our neighbors. As your former councilman from 2012 to 2019, it was a privilege working with members of our community, members of our faith leaders, small business community, labor, and others to advance our shared goals, like raising the minimum wage, passing paid sick and safe leave, improving funding for infrastructure, protecting our environment, and many other issues to make our community stronger. And as your representative, as your mayor, it'll be my absolute pleasure to work alongside you to not only pass the policies to improve our community, but make sure that you're an author in the generation of them so that we can co-create the future that we deserve. I'm an open book. Call or text me anytime. I'd love to hear from you. And what you can absolutely be sure of is that not only can you count on me to be a proactive representative for you, but having a relationship-based approach that's not just transactional. Having an approach that comes to you every time of the year, not simply when it's an election, not simply when there's a problem, but making sure that you're forefront in how we make decisions so you can feel confident in how the city works. I sincerely appreciate your consideration and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. John Hines.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for putting on this forum and having us here today. My name is John Hines. I am the current Tacoma City Council member for District 1, which is the west end and north end of the city of Tacoma. Very happy to be through the primary and on into the general election and excited for the conversation that lies ahead of us about the future of the city of Tacoma. I think Tacoma is at an important point in our history where a lot of change is happening. And I could have just sat back and continued on the council for another 2 years, but I felt motivated to run for mayor because I think the city can be better. I think there's changes that can be made. I think we would be doing a better job serving our community. And I think because of the fact that I'm on the council, I'm gonna be able to really deliver on that from day one. I've been here since 2020 and worked on the biggest issues the city has talked about, whether it's housing and homelessness, whether it's public safety, whether it's things as important as quality of life issues for our people in our city, to things as small as litter, trash, graffiti, and animal welfare. No stone has been left unturned in my time on the council, and I've prided myself on being someone who's really done the hard work of legislating, of working with my colleagues to really pull things across the finish line to make our city better. Looking ahead, I think the issues we're going to talk about today are the ones I hear from everyone when I'm out in the neighborhoods. I want to live in a place that's safe. I want to make sure that I have a safe place to live and that more people have an affordable place to call home. I want to make sure that I not only have a job, but a pathway to fulfillment and earning that can give me the nicer things in life. And I think as the next mayor, I'm going to be the one who's in best position to lead that forward and work with my colleagues to achieve it. At the end of the day, a lot of people running for mayor will talk about what they're going to do, but a mayor cannot do it alone. And so I'm deeply proud to have all the support of my colleagues on the council and many people in this community because they believe I'm the person who can really lead this city going forward and can really move the needle to making the city the place we all believe is our destiny. And look forward to the rest of your questions.
Thank you. Well, you're going to get the rest of the questions. And the order of answering, as I said, will rotate, and I'll tell you how much time you have, but you don't have to use all of it. So, you both grew up here. What are the great things about Tacoma that you don't want to see change? You have 60 seconds. John Hines is first.
All right. You know, Tacoma's always been a working class community. My dad was a truck driver, and he sold the truck when he gave up long haul truck driving. He sold that truck and bought a house, and the house is the one I grew up in. Tacoma used to be a community where working class people could raise a family, find a home, be part of the community, coach Little League or soccer, and really find fulfillment here. And that's something I always loved about our city, was that deep kind of sense of purpose, that deep community connection, and that's what I really don't want to see us lose. I want to see us to continue to be a place where working people can be part of the community, find meaning, raise a family. And I'm really like to look at what policies we can put in place to make sure Tacoma continues to remain that place, because there are many young people like me in this community who have found their success, found their place because of what Tacoma was, and I hope it continue to be.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
Well, we're the gritty city, right? And grit can mean a lot of things, but I think the positive aspect to that is a combination of the artsiness as well as just the blue collar, not just the mentality, but also the opportunity that's available to people. And as John mentioned, there are some absolute policy implications to this, mostly affordability. When we look at places like Seattle or other communities that have frankly become very sterile in a lot of places that used to have a lot of liveliness and vitality. A lot of it is creative people or just people from different walks of life that lent to the charm and lent to the uniqueness of these neighborhoods being priced out by tech bros or whatever you want to call them who are just willing to pay more for rent. And so if we have a thoughtful approach that bears in mind the impacts of increasing housing prices on working families, not only can we make more opportunities available for more Tacoma families, but just keep the neighborhoods enjoying that kind of charm that makes us what we are. And I'm very much looking forward to working on those things.
Thank you. Okay, and Anders Ibsen is first. What are the things about Tacoma that you think need to be changed?
All right, well, in no particular order, I mentioned affordability. That's both part of what we need to do to retain what makes us great, as well as something that frequently people have complained more and more about. You should not have to wait till you're 40 to buy your first home, for example. And so while the city has made some good inroads, I think it's been a multi-year process for passing housing policy, like Home in Tacoma, for example. I worked on some of the initial policies that were the bedrock of that. There are clearly some gaps in talking with builders and talking with potential would-be home buyers and also renters for what those policies are. And that's everything from cleaning up our permitting system to ensuring that there are actual accessible means of folks to actually have access to rentals, as well as just being very conscious about what kind of housing we need. I mean, your average Tacoma renter is not going to rent a $2,500 a month, one-bedroom or studio apartment downtown. We need to be much more intentional with the spaces we're creating for families who are already here and for people actually trying to set their first, to actually get rooted in home ownership. So actually abiding by their lived experience.
Thank you. John Hines.
No, I think affordability is a good topic and something the council's been working on for quite a while and really done a lot of important policies to kind of put us on a track where I think we'll get more affordability. I'd probably take my time to talk a little about safety. As I walked across the city, I've heard from multiple people that talk about the fact that they don't feel safe. And that it looks like many different things. It looks like when I call 911, sometimes people don't show up as quick as I'd like them to. When I'm walking down the street, the sidewalk's broken and I have to walk in the street, or there aren't any sidewalks. When my kids go to play at the park, there's speeding cars, there's things that make it unsafe for me to feel like I can let my kids go out. And so I really think safety is the preeminent response, the thing that we have to do. It's something that's completely within our control in too many ways in the city, right? How do we address perceptions of safety and how do we make sure people feel safer? It's not just police and fire, it's also all of our alternative response models, but it's also things like fixing sidewalks, removing graffiti, picking up litter, and empowering neighbors to take control of their communities and be more active in making sure safety's felt.
Thank you. Tacoma has currently a huge deficit, has had to pay lots of money for lots of problems. Why has it been so bad? And why do people continue to get salary increases, some large, when the city is running a huge deficit? And you have up to 90 seconds.
Good question. I think the critical thing to keep in mind is if you look at where our income comes from as a city, we have four main places we get our tax revenue: business taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and utility taxes. One of those, property taxes, is capped to where it cannot grow more than 1% per year. So when you look at it growing at 1% per year, but you look at over the last 5 years, costs like inflation have gone up much more than 5%, much more than 1% a year. We're going to continue to have a structural deficit where our revenues are not going to be able to keep pace with the costs. To your point about salaries, I think one of the critical things keep in mind is we are not alone in trying to attract and retain employees. And we have to pay competitive wages in order to get the right people, the best people, to want to work for the city of Tacoma. And so as we look at that, we have to make sure that our salaries stay competitive with other cities around us. So while we're being compounded by the fact that our tax revenues are not keeping pace with inflation, we also recognize that we're competing against other cities for the amazing employees we have. And we have amazing employees here in the state of Tacoma that I'm deeply proud of, but that requires us to pay wages that are competitive. And I think over time, we have to continue to find ways to grow our tax base within those 4 buckets to really make sure we can keep pace with some of the costs. And I'm sure we'll talk more about businesses, but I think one of the critical pieces is how do we expand our business tax base here in the city of Tacoma to get more people doing business here, and that will help us really offset some of the structural deficit that we continue to face.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
So whenever I talk with people at the door about a very similar question, which is how did we get here? Why do we always have structural deficits, seemingly? It's because we have a dysfunctional state tax code. It's because we have a state tax code that predominantly places the burden of paying for services on the backs of seniors and working families and asks very little of billionaires and multinational corporations, and that has implications for municipal governments. So we have to both walk and chew gum at the same time. That's a recurring theme with local government, whether it's homelessness, safety, or fiscal matters. And the reality is we have to do all of the above. In the short to medium term, we need to have a responsible conversation about how to proactively fund the services that we care about, like public safety, like infrastructure, and we need to do so in a way that inspires confidence. I mean, we've had 2 failed levies recently, both for fire as well as for streets and infrastructure and safe access to schools for our children. And it's not like voters in Tacoma don't value those services, but actually making a compelling case about where the money is going right now and where it's going to go in the most compelling and also just transparent way possible is going to be really essential to making the argument. We do have to do our best to control costs and find efficiencies line by line in the budget and just be very transparent about making that case to the voters. But more than that, we also have to advocate longer term for structural fixes to structural problems. So that involves working with our state and federal delegations to make sure that we're accessing as many resources as possible to fund these services sustainably, and also advocating where it makes sense for a fairer, more just, and more stable state tax code. You have to walk and chew gum at the same time as a leader.
Thank you. Tacoma needs a new police commissioner and a new city manager. What are your thoughts about where to look and what to look for? And you may discuss one or both, and you have 90 seconds. Anders Ibsen.
So before I get to the what I'm looking for, I think what's even more important is how we arrive at talented people. And as a member of the city council, the only person running for mayor who actually participated in executive hiring, the hiring of 2 city managers, and also the hiring of the utility director, what I can say is that we need to have a process that inspires confidence, because that's something that a lot of voters that I've been speaking to really are finding is lacking, is trust in how the city makes its decisions. So whether it's a national search, whether it's local or some combination, we need to ensure that people's voices are heard as early in the selection process as possible, not when we already have finalists from a national search, for example, but ideally having that input from the community inform the firm that we're hiring, for example, inform just the key tenets of how the search for talent goes for the city manager, and just making sure that those community expectations are baked in so that not only can the community feel more confident, but we're setting up the new administration for maximum success so we can deliver on those services that people need, and so we can enhance the morale within the organization too. I've heard nothing but good things about Interim Chief Jackson. I want to make sure that in order, by the same token, to set her up for success if she does choose to move forward and if the council chooses to approve, that we can ensure that she and her department have all the support they need and the full confidence of the community. But everything begins and ends with good process, transparency, and just maximizing confidence from community members.
Thank you. John Hines.
Can you repeat the question, Liz?
Sure. Tacoma needs a new police commissioner and a new city manager. What are your thoughts about where to look and what to look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is recognizing and finding people that understand kind of how special and unique Tacoma is in many ways, right? We have a wonderful city that I deeply love. I know that my opponent deeply loves too. And we really need to find someone who understands and recognizes kind of how special this place is and what makes us the community that we are. So I think first and foremost, as we're looking out there, I think the search should be as broad as possible, but we really want to find people that want to be in Tacoma, that love our city, and can be deeply committed to the things that we are committed to. A process is very important, and I agree. We want to make sure we have community buy-in, and we want community feedback in a process that's open and fair, that people understand, and can even if they don't agree with where we land, they at least appreciated that we reached out to them and understood where their concerns were, what they wanted to see, and how it got to be part of the process. I am deeply impressed with Interim Chief Patty Jackson. I think she's done a wonderful job. If we gave her a clear rubric of what we wanted her to do, increase hiring, boost morale, be present in the community, I think she's done a wonderful job on that front. But I do think before we make her the permanent chief, there is a process by which we need to get out in the community and make sure people understand who she is and get to know her a little bit better. I also deeply like our interim city manager, Hyun Kim. I think he's also doing a great job. And what I really appreciate about him is his willingness, his creativity, his kind of outside-the-box thinking that he brings that I think is really important because Tacoma's facing some challenging times, and we need someone who can bring kind of that kind of creative thinking to our city.
Thank you. Okay, Tacoma still has a huge homeless problem. Please tell us your plans for increasing the number of shelter beds and how and where we create needed housing. 90 seconds.
All right. So for shelter beds, I think there's two levers that we can look at for right now that can make sense. We invested a lot of our ARPA funding into shelter during the pandemic, and we were able to set up a lot of shelter beds. As that has faded away, and a lot of cities like ours or regions are struggling with tax funding, we have to get a little creative. I think first, we need to look at the county and the unified regional approach that's coming and look at how we can partner with the county and the other regional cities around us to help us address homelessness and help pay for some of the shelter beds. 80% of the shelter beds are currently inside the city of Tacoma, and we are kind of continuing to pay for a kind of an undue burden of the amount of services we're providing for people experiencing homelessness, and we need to bring the county and the region together to do that because it is a regional issue. I think we could look creatively at our House Bill 1590 funds, our 1/10 of 1% sales tax for affordable housing and shelter. We can reallocate some of those funding because shelter is obviously still a very present need for us in our community, and to make sure we're kind of investing in that. I would say, looking ahead, the Tacoma Rescue Mission, the city invested in that, and there's 100 beds coming online at the men's shelter there at Tacoma Rescue Mission. We also have over 200 out at the Spanaway Village that will help, at least in the immediate term or shorter term, with getting some of the shelter beds that we need to kind of house the people who are currently on our streets. But I do think the regional conversation, and not only having a regional conversation with the county and other cities, but talking to the state, because the state has been also a key cog in paying for some of our shelter beds we've had in our city, and we'll need to continue to be partnering with them in the near future.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
It's very encouraging, what seems like broad consensus for regionalism. The key is how we focus on that, because focus is really what's been lacking. So in particular, when it comes to working more with our regional partners, like the county, surrounding jurisdictions, it's important that we make sure we're being as inclusive as possible. So for example, the Puyallup tribe has recurring problems with homelessness and with impact to their services as well. Are there potential for interlocal agreements with entities like the tribe or others, for example? But it's more than just shelter, because the presence of shelter or the absence of enough spaces for folks isn't just simply a reflection of the amount of shelter beds, it's also just burden on the overall system. And for me, that speaks to what are the other systems that are attending to people who really have no business being there but need support instead. I'm thinking primarily of our jails, our ERs, for example. So a greater focus on diversion from places that are really inappropriate for people in need, and finding as many efficiencies as possible in alternative facilities and models like WellFound, for example. Taking a look at Tacoma Community Court and looking at all the areas for comorbidities with substance problems and just finding as many sustainable pathways for people who need help as possible. We also do, as my opponent mentioned, need to work more closely with the state. That also includes people who are very low barrier and who are in need of protection from both themselves and others, and just ensuring that people are getting the help they need and not simply continuing to exist in a system and clogging up the need for services for other folks, because people need the help and the community needs the relief.
Thank you. Okay, I know you both visited the detention center recently, which is apparently now the Northwest Ice Processing Center. What are your thoughts about what you saw, and did you see ways of improving things there? 90 seconds.
Yes, it was really sobering. Among other people, one of them was a gentleman who had been lawfully here, had been married, was a green card holder, married for 6 years to an American, and was being detained. Increasingly, we're seeing the reckless actions of this administration in going after people who are literally following the rules. They're actually going after people in citizenship hearings, people who are attending meetings that they have been told to go to. What you're seeing is the literal opposite of the rule of law. And before we talk about the facility, let's talk about what I think people are really looking for, which is leadership that speaks to the values of our community. We are a community that values people from different backgrounds, and we also value the United States Constitution and the rule of law. So making sure that we have leaders with crystal clear values who are not going to shy away from that is essential. In terms of our relationship with ICE or our relationship with the facility, I'm not going to get ahead of information that might have been talked about in privileged meetings. I'm not going to put things in people's mouths. I definitely have an appreciation for what goes on in those meetings. That being said, GEO, whatever you want to call this facility, is a private for-profit entity, which means it has a Tacoma business license. So there have to be some kind of regulatory methods by which we can work with the health department, work with the attorney general to find greater accountability for the well-being of detainees, the vast majority of whom have zero criminal records. And just being abundantly clear about our values as a community and just leaving no stone unturned to protect people's rights as well as the safety of our community.
Thank you. John Hines.
Yes, I would agree. My opponent was deeply sobering. I talked to another gentleman who was here legally and was in detention for over a year, even though he had previously already said that he was willing to be deported to his country of origin, was held there for a long period of time after that, which is deeply troubling. I think how we address this issue, I think it's being really crystal clear with our community about what we can and can't do. I think we have to talk about what we are able to do to really mitigate some of the impacts. So recent federal court rulings and state laws are allowing us to do further inspections with the health department, further inspections with labor and industries, further inspections for health and safety reasons, and I think we need to do that as best we can, or continue to advocate and say it is critical, it is state law that we are allowed to inspect these facilities to make sure the people there are taken care of and that the health and safety of them is up to the standards that we believe everyone is due in this country. I also think further, as a city, we've stood very clear on the fact that we follow state law and the Working Washington Act. We do not work with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Our police department does not turn over data to the federal agencies. We are focused on keeping our community safe and enforcing the rules and laws of our city. But I do think it's really important that we're crystal clear about what we can and we can't do, and recognizing that it is a private company operating under a federal contract, and there are limits to what we can do, and I don't like to overpromise and underdeliver.
Thank you. Still at the detention center, is there a way of improving Tacoma Police Department accountability for investigating crimes there? A minute, John Hines.
Yes, there was a recent report from the University of Washington about that. We have been working very closely with Patty Jackson, our police chief, and with some of the immigrant rights advocacy groups that are supporting the folks that are inside the Northwest Detention Processing Center. And yes, we do. These individuals are inside the state of Tacoma. When they call 911 and they have crimes that have been committed, the police department needs to respond and work to make sure those people are provided the legal remedies that they're required, the justice they're owed, and to continue to make sure that the rules and laws of the state of Tacoma are enforced inside of there, which I think we should, with the state law and the oversight we're able to have, we can continue to do more further. So it's a direct conversation we've had with our police department, and I believe we will see a different response in the future.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
Yes, I'm happy to have those conversations, working with not simply local law enforcement. I'm absolutely happy to see what we can do to work with Interim Chief Jackson, the department, and local law enforcement to ensure people are protected. But there are other methods of enforcement besides simply law enforcement. So current law, as my opponent mentioned, under the Washington Working Act, allows for greater regulatory oversight by entities like the health department, for example, and the city, unlike state agencies like L&I, unlike the Attorney General, we actually are co-governors of the health department with the county. So are we doing everything we can to ensure that our health department actually is, in fact, enforcing these provisions, and that we are actually using every tool under our local enforcement rubric to ensure that people are protected. So as mayor, if elected, I'm going to ensure that every aspect of our enforcement mechanism, whether it's directly in-house with law enforcement, whether it's with the health department, or working in conjunction with other entities, that we're using everything allowed under the law to ensure people are protected and people's rights are being valued.
Okay, thank you. Do you support the pledge for immigrants and refugees which has been developed? Yes or no? And a 1 or 2 sentence explanation, please. Anders Ibsen.
Yes, I support the promise of defending the rights of people in the city of Tacoma. Being a leader means that we have to stand with people from all of our backgrounds. We're a nation of immigrants. And as elected leaders, people are looking to us to make sure that we're defending everything from your neighborhood to your rights under the United States Constitution. You take an oath, whether you're a local lawmaker, a state lawmaker, a federal lawmaker, to value the Constitution. And especially in this day and age when there is so much uncertainty, there are so many people at the door when I'm talking with voters in the community who almost feel like they don't know which way is up. They just don't know what's going to happen federally, that they're just living in a historic time in a bad sense. People need as much certainty as possible about the values of their leadership and what we're going to do. Even if there are limitations, even if there is ambiguity, people at least need to know where we're going, what the values of the community are, and that we're leaving no stone unturned. We are exhausting every avenue to protect people.
John Hines.
Yes. One thing I've always valued about this community, I went to Lincoln High School, right, and that community has a huge, Southeast Asian population, which were immigrant refugees from Southeast Asia that came and really brought a lot of vibrancy and are a critical piece of who we are as a community down in Tacoma. And so I think that one of our deep values here in the city is we are a city of immigrants. We are a city of people from all across the world. It is something that makes our community stronger, not weaker. It's something that makes our community, the diversity, the strength, the vibrancy comes from that. And so I think clearly that is who we've always been, and we need to stand up on those values going forward. I think it's not enough just to say, we care or we value them. It's that we need to show it through, as my opponent said, through everything we do. And as the leadership of this community, we need to continue to stand up, even when there's risks, even when we're concerned about what may come from it, to stand up for the people who make our community what it is and what we value.
Thank you. Okay, John Hines is first. You could have up to 45 seconds if you need it. Do you support the Workers' Bill of Rights and raising the minimum wage in Tacoma to $20? Yes, no, and a brief explanation if you want.
Ooh. I will just say raising wages, more predictable schedules, and safe workplaces are all ideas and values that I hold and I think we should support. But due to ongoing litigation around the Workers' Bill of Rights and being a current city council member, I cannot comment further on that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Anders Ibsen.
So I definitely support in principle the idea of raising the wage. People are struggling in our city with affordability. People are so close to the brink. That's why I was proud to help raise the wage to $15 per hour when I was on the city council. What I also support is the rule of law and respecting people's trust in government. Regardless of what your thoughts are on Measure 2, it's not necessarily a perfect proposition. The people who brought this initiative forward followed the rules. They gathered a lawful amount of signatures. They brought it to their city. And they're facing gamesmanship and evasion when it should just be as simple as putting it on the ballot and letting the voters decide. So I respect not simply the need for supporting working families to make sure that they have what they need to pay their bills and actually live a full life, but I also respect the will of the voters and the rule of law.
Thank you. Okay. Affordable housing. There are great needs for this. How have you and will you work to get the housing we need? 90 seconds if you need it. Anders Ibsen is first.
Yes, and as someone who works in this field, it's near and dear to my heart. I work with people from all walks of life who are trying to enter home ownership, and they are struggling right now between today's cost and today's interest rates. So in no particular order, what we need is to actually look at what's working and what's not with our current policies. I think that the Home in Tacoma rezone has been a force for good in terms of opening up more avenues, but there are clear gaps as evidenced by the fact that it still takes like a year and a half to get a short plat, for example, to open up more housing opportunities. And above all, everything needs to be really zoomed in on the experiences of people that we really are trying to help, namely first-time home buyers and families who are here renting right now. So that means, can we open up more types of housing like starter homes, for example? Can we open up new types of financing, new types of opportunities for actually making it make sense for more builders to build these things? And can we also activate things like adaptive reuse so that buildings that are already here, especially our beautiful old historic stock, which we have in a lot of our neighborhoods, can we have more alternatives to just demolition? Can we actually reuse what's there and look at some of these pretty old buildings like in the Lincoln District or the North Slope or Stadium, for example? So can we have all these options available, and above all, just involving the lived experience of these people in decisions so that people can have full confidence in what we're doing, that it's for their benefit?
Thank you. John Hines.
Yeah. Well, since I've been on the council, this has been an area of focus of mine. So Home in Tacoma, our large rezoning package that started prior to my time on the council, but I really helped shepherd through in the last few years to really try to expand the amounts of housing, the types of housing we can provide in our city, and really open up the different types of housing to really hopefully get more of that affordability. One project I've been really super excited about has been leading on this ADU accelerator program. Like, how do we get ADUs built faster in our city? And so we've expanded permitting options, bought pre-approved plans for people to pull off the shelf, expanded the number of people who can come, who are doing site development, all with the idea of speeding ADU development. With my vision being that we use the lessons learned with speeding ADU development into speeding other kinds of Home in Tacoma-like development. I think not only just opening up the zoning and allowing more housing types, we also have to talk seriously about how do we, provide more subsidized housing, because if you look at some of the market rate housing and then you look at some of the Home in Tacoma housing, there's a whole chunk of our population where that's even out of their reach. And so we have to think about how we use our housing trust fund to expand more housing types to those folks, those people making, 30% to 0 of AMI, sometimes permanent supportive housing, but often subsidized housing. We need to look at how we can expand more options like that, like Patsy Cyril Connell Place in Lincoln, along with just kind of the zoning and housing types that we're allowing in our city.
Thank you. There is major dissatisfaction with the Tacoma Police Department, and there are problems with street racing and speeding and property crimes, theft, garbage dumping, violent crimes as well. Probably getting a new police chief is not the total answer. What are your thoughts and plans? John Hines first, 60 seconds.
Great. So a couple of those topics are ones that are near and dear to me, because things like illegal dumping and street racing are ordinances that I helped pass while I was on the council and was happy to be a sponsor and a co-sponsor of, changing the code to really make it so our police can actually enforce those things. I think clearly the number one thing we need in order to address some of these broader issues is we need enough police officers. We need a fully staffed police department, which is why I was proud to vote for lateral hire bonuses, which as of last week brought in 10 new police officers to our police department, really closing our gap. And I'm really confident that Chief Jackson will continue to close the gap. Beyond that, it's also looking at our alternative response models, like our community service officers, to kind of be out in the community and responding to nonviolent, non-emergency crimes. And then I have to take a minute to talk about Tidy Up Tacoma, which is one of my biggest accomplishments I've been on the council, which is kind of a permanent funding of litter, trash, graffiti removal, community activation, and volunteer help service that I think really helps deal with the perceptions of safety, which is when you're picking up litter, removing graffiti, and helping people feel safer as they're going around too.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
Well, safety is really multifaceted. It absolutely begins and ends with full staffing of the police department. I am pleased to see that movement there. But we also have to be really, really conscious of adequate staffing for support services, too, that protect our officers and allow them to do their jobs even more effectively, so they're not just returning to the same problems time and time again. So, for example, having more than half a dozen or so mental health co-responders, for example, so that people are having alternatives to incarceration or the ER, right, and actually getting the help they need, and getting neighborhoods the relief that they need from recurring problems. Making sure that we're stepping up as a community to support our police as well through neighborhood block watch group organizations, looking at the success of organizations like Safe Streets, the Hilltop Action Coalition. What more support can we provide those organizations to have a multiplier effect to support TPD? And finally, safety isn't just about responding to problems, it's about making our environments safer to begin with, and that's everything from having an investment in infrastructure, livability, code enforcement, and just the beautification of our neighborhoods so people can feel pride. And so that safety isn't just about responding to problems, but just making things better to begin with.
Thank you. Okay, and Anders Ibsen is first, and you have 60 seconds. Do you have any plans to improve economic opportunities for young people? If so, what? And if you can keep them here, will they be able to afford to live here? Throw that in, too.
Yes, and I think one of the key ways is just having a clear economic development plan to begin with and a clear connection to the K-12 and the community college and trade school system. So one of the biggest recurring problems for any kind of economic development plan, but especially in Tacoma, is just the lack of certainty about what our priorities are, where things are going. We had interim regulations in the Tide Flats, Port of Tacoma area that dragged on for years, for example, due to political gamesmanship. And just providing greater certainty, I think, is extremely essential. So focusing on the unique assets like our waterfront, our manufacturing centers, that Tacoma has historically done well with and could be poised to do even better with the innovative jobs and the clean technologies of the future. And what are ways that building off of the success of things like the Port Maritime Center and others, that we can better align our educational system and other opportunities to ensure that there's a very clear pipeline of opportunity for these students, and by that very nature, a beacon to investors and employers that we have a skilled workforce ready to get to work.
Thank you. John Hines.
Yeah, so this is something I think about a lot as an educator, and I think it comes back to it's creating more and more pathways for young people, right? So as a teacher, students often had limited vision of what was possible for them in the future. And so one of the critical things I think the city can do is partnering with K-12, this K-12 school system, with our kind of post-secondary educations, our community colleges, our colleges like the University of Washington, Tacoma, and University of Puget Sound, our building trades and our trades in general, and really make sure every student sees a pathway for themselves into not just a job, but gainful employment that can pay the bills, can pay for housing, but also pay for the nice things in life. And I think one thing the mayor can do, and I will do, is work with those organizations to really try to pull them together to be really focused on how do we make sure every kid who walks out of our high school or while they're in high school has an idea of what a pathway is for them to find this gainful employment. And I think it takes a mayor like myself, who's an educator, who's in that work, that can really pull those organizations together and really drive that vision forward.
Thank you. What do you see as Tacoma's biggest unrecognized problem? And if you think all of our problems are recognized, talk about the biggest one and your plans to try to solve it. John Hines.
I mean, I think you've talked about it already, but I always come back to it as I'm the chair of the Government Performance and Finance Committee, which is our budget, right, and our structural deficit that's in our budget. People talk about safety. People talk about affordable housing and subsidizing housing. I talk about it. But at the end of the day, if our budget isn't able to keep pace with what we see as needed in the community, it's going to always be an ongoing issue we're going to have to deal with. And so while I think that it has been discussed recently, I think coming back to that again and again is going to be really important for the next mayor. It's not only how do we continue to stay in the kind of circle that we've been in since, 2011 or 2011 after the Great Recession, where we're continuing to kind of grapple with the structural deficit. How are we going to break out of that and kind of grow the budget forward? I mean, one of the clear ways we can talk about is how do we expand the number of businesses that are doing business here in the city of Tacoma. My opponent made a good point. We need to kind of get through some of the uncertainty that has kind of been in our community and really have a clear focus. But I think that is the biggest question for the next mayor and the biggest question for our city in the years ahead.
Thank you. Andrew Ibsen.
Well, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give you two unrecognized problems. So one is the over-reliance of the Tacoma-Pierce County region on the public sector and the base in terms of employer headcount and economic development. And in terms of our city's demographics, the insane chasm of opportunity, life expectancy, and opportunity between different zip codes. So if you're in the north end, for example, if you live around Proctor Stadium, average lifespan is in the 80s or so. You go to 98409, 98444, South Tacoma, South End. Life expectancy is literally going to drop 10 to 15 years. It's called the social indicators of health via the health department. And both of these are kind of parts of the same coin, because what we've seen historically is when Tacoma does make advances, it's usually through gentrification and just a real frailty to economic cycles. So making sure as we build our community, we do so with an eye towards building a robust, local, and resilient private sector wage base that can provide middle-class opportunities for people who are already here so that we can survive market cycles and have greater resiliency and budget sustainability.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew Ibsen will be first, of course. What in the way the Tacoma government is organized and how it works do you like the least? And will you try to change it? And if so, how?
Sure. So our form of government, I would call a kind of a weird hybrid, because on paper we're a city manager form of government, but unlike most city manager systems, as you're seeing in front of you right now, we elect the mayor as a community. And in my experience, what this and other kind of unique circumstances leads to is a system with less than clear rules about how things actually operate, a system that's more based on informal understandings versus stated policy-minded types of decisions. And that, among other kind of quirks of Tacoma's system, can lead to a feeling of not the most involved way for participation and making decisions. It's left a lot of people out of fully being able to trust how things happen. And so as the mayor under the current system, my commitment is to ensure that whenever possible, we're investing as much time on the front end with major decisions like the budget, major staff decisions, hiring, to involve you on the front end so you have the greatest role in decision making.
Thank you. John Hines.
Can you just repeat the question one more time,
Yep.
Liz? I want to make sure I get it.
What in the way that Tacoma government is organized and how it works do you like the least? And will you try to change it? And if so, how?
Yes. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is in the organization, the city manager form of government, strong mayor form of government, both have their pros and cons. I'm fine with the current system we have right now, but I do think one place that we are at a disadvantage is the council really doesn't have enough staff to be kind of independent and focused on kind of policy making, right? And I would really love to see us add capacity to the council to make policy. And to the public, that might seem like, well, why are we adding more people to the city council? But what I tell the public is, if we had more staff that could be out in community talking to you folks and understanding what your issues are, beyond just me and the council being out there, if we had expertise in different subject areas who could bring in diverse perspectives, I think you would see the policy, actually I know you would see the policy really kind of revolutionize, transform, and really get us to really drive the needle, move the needle on some of the issues people care about the most. So the form of government I'm fine with. I think it's just how do we make sure we staff it in such a way that when the ideas come in from the public or when council members are really impassioned about something, we have the support needed to really turn those into reality.
Great. This will be the last question. John Hines will answer it first. What do you like the most about how Tacoma's government is organized?
I really like that we have both at-large council members and district council members. So I have the pleasure of being a district council member representing District 1, which is the same as my opponent. And I think that's really important to have district council members who can really be on the ground and focused on the issues for their council district. I also like that we have at-large council members who can be supportive in that work and also kind of take a view of kind of bigger citywide, broader citywide issues. And so I think that's something I really value. One thing that the current mayor says that I always appreciate is in our current system, if you live in the city, there are 5 people who are responsible to you. Your district rep, the 3 at-large members, and the mayor. So in our system, no matter where you live, you get to vote for 5 people that get to make decisions for the council. So you actually have the influence over a majority of the council can really, you have your voice be responded to. And I think that's something that's really unique and I really like about our system of government.
Great, thank you. Andrew Ibsen.
Well, it's less about the specifics about our form of government. It's more about just Tacoma and its place in the South Sound is that when we really put our mind to things and we actually lead on issues, we really punch above our weight and we set statewide or even national precedent. So when we raised the wage, when we passed paid sick and safe leave, it became the basis for state law a year later. Same thing with our renter protections that we passed in 2018 in the wake of the residents of the Tiki apartments who were facing eviction. We passed common sense, middle-of-the-road renter protections to protect them. And then a year later, the legislature effectively copied Tacoma's model. And these are just a couple of other examples of things that I had the privilege of working with leaders in our community on during my time on city council. But we've also, I mean, look at our waterfront. We've led on so many things that have been groundbreaking examples of smart partnerships. And I think that Tacoma's model of smart collaboration of local leadership and just being a good barometer for what outside of Seattle, Washington looks like, I think that it really speaks to what good leadership looks like and what can look like even more.
Thank you. Thank you both. Now it's time for closing statements. In reverse ballot order, John Hines will make the first closing statement, and you have 1 minute.
First of all, thank you so much for having us here today. I think this is a very important decision about the future of our city, and the vote today for the next 4 years can really set up the next 4 decades here in our city with leadership. Since I've been on the council, I've really stepped into leading on some of the issues that people care about the most. Housing and homelessness, affordable housing, zoning and land use reform, public safety, and things as interesting as animal welfare, litter, trash, and graffiti. Kind of led on a lot of issues. And I take deep pride in the fact that most of my colleagues believe that I'm a good leader. Most of my colleagues feel like I'm the right person to be the next mayor. And I think I've shown through my time, not just to be on the sidelines and take credit for what the council did or to highlight what happened while I happened to be there, but really led and stepped out in front in a lot of issues. And I think there's a lot of folks who have told me, hey, John, I may not agree with you, but I deeply respect you, and I see that you're a leader with a clear vision, and I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Anders Ibsen.
I'm so grateful for having this opportunity to not simply address the voters, but also just for all of the months of conversation that I've had the privilege of having at the door with people from all walks of life, from all the neighborhoods in Tacoma. It is clear people are hungry for a change, and there are so many people who believe in the possibility of our city. This election is fundamentally about how you want to feel about our city and what you think the city can really achieve when we have limitless courage and imagination. And I think that all comes down to who's in charge and also who is bringing on board a team of people, both administratively as well as in terms of the citizens that we're bringing into volunteer boards and commissions and so forth, what kind of team we're bringing into City Hall. And also what it really means is how are you making those decisions? When big things like the budget, city manager hire, decisions big or small happen, who is being involved and when are they being involved? And that's my commitment to you, to make sure that you're not simply passive participants to something that happens to you, but you are authors, that you are people who are co-creating the future of our city. I'm so excited to do this with you and look forward to your consideration and very much appreciative.
Thank you both. This has been fun. John Hines and Anders Ibsen are the candidates for Tacoma Mayor. Thank you both for being with us and answering our questions. Reminder to all, the election is November 4th. Your ballot must be postmarked or placed in a drop box by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 4th. If you are not yet registered to vote, please do register. You still can. And don't forget to vote. Thank you all.